recording. So thanks for joining us for tapping into the urban water cycle, where you're going to learn how we protect water from its source to your sink. So welcome to EnviroSchool. We are excited to share with you how we manage and use the water in our homes, schools, and businesses, and how state employees help protect that water source. Just a quick bit of background. What is the urban water cycle? You're probably familiar with the natural water cycle, that whole circular notion of evaporation and precipitation and runoff and infiltration and evapotranspiration through the plants. Well, the urban water cycle, or the human water cycle, as some people call it, includes all the ways that we capture, use, clean, and then return that water to its source. So we have a graphic here from Project Wet, which is used with permission here to show what's included in that cycle and what you're going to see in our presentation today. There's source water, that includes surface water, groundwater. Here in Michigan, we don't really use atmospheric water as source water, but some places they do. That source water is collected and delivered to a water treatment facility where it's cleaned for human consumption. That's what happens in an urban area. You'll hear briefly about wells in non-urban areas today as well. And from that water treatment plant, it moves through pipes, tanks, pumps to the water users who use the water and then send waste through more drains and pumps and pipes, etc., to a wastewater treatment plant where that water is cleaned to the point that it won't pollute a natural system, at which point it is returned back to the source water. And again, it happens a little differently in a rural area than an urban, which we'll talk briefly about. But connecting all of the points of this water cycle, as you can see in the middle, are those arrows pointing to infrastructure. So there's the pipes, the tanks, the pumps, the valves, the drains, everything that moves that water through the system. And this portion here is really just looking at drinking water, at water that comes to our homes and that we use and then flush down the sanitary sewer as waste. So we're going to talk about stormwater runoff and non-point source pollution and all that stuff in a future EnviroSchool webinar. But today we're focusing in on drinking water. So we have some awesome presenters today whose faces have popped up on the screen, who are going to tell you all about these different parts of the urban water cycle, and they're going to talk with you about how to engage your students and your audiences in learning about both the processes that happen in these different steps, but also what some of the careers are that exist in this field that you can make available to your students. So today you will hear from 5 of our staff, and if you folks want to go ahead and our presenters, just turn your cameras on for a minute so that they can see your faces. You'll have 4 staff from EGLE's Drinking Water and Environmental Health Division speaking with you, and you'll have 1 staff person from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services talking about their work to help clean and protect our drinking water. So I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves in more detail in their presentations, and they'll each have 8 to 10 minutes or so to talk about their area of expertise, their area of the urban water cycle, and then we will have an overall discussion, question and answer time after I make some curricular connections to you. So again, feel free to put your questions in the chat at any time. If you just joined us and you haven't had a chance to introduce yourself in the chat, please go ahead and do that. We would love to know who's here, and that way we'll also be able to share those or save those questions out of the chat to share answers out later to the whole group and to folks who registered but weren't able to attend. So without further ado, I am going to turn it over to our program staff, who you're all here to listen to anyway, not me. And we're going to start at the very beginning of the cycle with source water. So first up, we have Sarah Pearson, who supervises our source water protection unit. So I'm going to quit my sharing, and Sarah, I'm going to turn it over to you to lead the way.
All right, very good. Thank you, Eileen, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm excited to be here. And let's get my screen shared. Okay. Are you seeing everything?
It looks good, Sarah.
Okay, wonderful. As Eileen said, I am the supervisor of our source water unit, and I am a geologist by training, hydrogeologist. and have been working in the field of environmental cleanup and source water protection now for almost 30 years. And I'm really passionate about our water here in Michigan. And I'm excited to tell you a bit about it here today and invite you to, whenever you want to reach out and have questions or talk about education with students, that's another thing that I think is really important and would really love to engage with you. So we'll get going. All right, so how do we protect source water? As we know, source water is our rivers, our lakes, and our groundwater here in Michigan. And what we have in place are regulations. So we have laws and rules that are very important in providing some guidelines on what needs to be done to protect our source water, as well as then that we've developed programs and partnerships from those rules. We have voluntary programs and we have mandatory programs. And then partnerships, we work not only here in drinking water, but we work with our water resources division. We work with our other divisions and sister agencies here in the state. We also work with federal agencies, US EPA and USDA, and we work with MDARD. So there's quite a few groups that we work with, and it's all based on the science. And the science is very important to help us protect the source water. So for regulations, this October, it's the 50th anniversary of the Clean Water Act, and clean water is our source water. And so it's very important. And I know that we're going to be doing some big things this coming month for EGLE to celebrate the Clean Water Act. But protection of the water quality is key to ensuring that we have a good source of drinking water. The Safe Drinking Water Act is also very important. That focuses primarily on the drinking water and puts into place regulations that will help us ensure that the water is safe to drink. There's standards for contaminant levels in the drinking water. There's permits processes that are required for drinking water wells, whether they are a well for your community, in your cities, your public water supplies, or even if it's your private well at home and it just services your household. There's permit requirements as far as how they should be constructed and where they can be located. There's also requirements, especially here in Michigan, being in the Great Lakes state with an abundance of water, we still need to be mindful of the use of our water. So we have regulations on large quantity withdrawals, which are withdrawals of water at over 70 gallons per minute. And those we track and keep an eye on as well, because that also impacts our source water supply. The public health code is also very important, and that encompasses the whole cycle that Eileen showed you, that from pulling it from the ground or the surface water and treating it and drinking it to the disposal of it. Sanitation is also very important, and that's why we have sanitary code that requires certain placement and requirements for septic systems and waste disposal. So those are all very critical in making sure that our source water stays clean. Also, the Michigan Well Construction Code, that applies to your household wells that you may have at home. And there are certain requirements for the construction of those wells to make sure that the water stays clean and that contamination doesn't come from the surface and enter the well. So there's certain ways to construct the well appropriately and also keep it away from other sources of contamination. You don't want it next to your septic system, as an example. That wouldn't be very good, would it? And then environmental remediation. Those laws are in place to help us identify where there's contamination in an aquifer. And we use those laws to determine when we need to clean up the hazardous substances that have been released to the subsurface and what source water they have contaminated and whether we clean them up or we take other approaches to manage those releases to the environment. And then there's our programs and partnerships. This is the fun part, especially in source water. We have source water protection plans, and starting in the mid-90s, after some amendments to the Safe Drinking Water Act, Michigan started a wellhead protection plan program. And we also include surface water intake protection plans. So we lump them together and call them source water protection plans. But we know that there are communities across the state that have intakes of surface water, like the city of Grand Rapids. The source of their water is Lake Michigan. And then we have communities like Lansing where their source water is groundwater and wellheads. Same with city of Kalamazoo as a couple of examples. And we have 93 communities across the state that have these plans in place, and we encourage those communities and more to put these plans in place, because what they have are they have 7 elements that are really critical for protecting your water. And it identifies who in the community is responsible for keeping track of the plan and ensuring that the plan is carried out. It includes identifying the area that needs to be protected, the geographic area from which a wellhead pulls the water. It includes identifying potential sources of contamination and managing those and making sure that if there are spills or releases from those locations, that we are monitoring those to make sure that the source water is not contaminated. We identify wellhead protection management areas. And sometimes when you're driving along and you come across a community, you might see the sign on the roadside that says you're entering a wellhead protection management area. That's part of one of these plans. That's a community with a plan. And another really critical piece of having a plan in place is having a contingency plan and identifying an alternate source of water if something were to happen in case of an emergency to that source water. And it also includes the plans for new wells. If we have to identify new wells because we need more capacity, the community is growing and there's a greater demand for water, we also would like to have that added in as part of the wellhead protection plan. So those are accounted for as well. And then there's the publication, the public education and outreach portion that's really critical. And that's where the fun part comes in, is we have lots of opportunities for educating the public, participating in children's water festivals. We've got a lot in the way of social media campaigns, and there's some communities that do outreach with K through 12. And EGLE supports these events and these plans with grants. And we do a 50-50 grant match with communities who apply for them. We do approximately $400,000 a year, supplying money in the form of grants to communities for developing their plans, doing public education and outreach, and also developing new locations for wells and doing the work there, identifying good spots to where there's source water available. And those are available in a variety of communities, as I said, and they range from very small communities across the state to the very large. And keep an eye out for that. I've got a few examples that I'll show you in an upcoming slide. Promoting stewardship is another activity that EGLE is very interested in, and I partner with the Office of the Great Lakes in promoting stewardship. There's a K through 12 STEM to Stewards program that we are beginning to engage in and very interested in. And even our colleagues over there in Michigan DNR, they have a Forest to My Faucet program that they have started. And we're beginning to engage with them on as well, because a healthy forest means that you have healthy source water. And even in urban areas, there are communities that are managing forest areas so that they can ensure that their source water is clean and protected. It's a much better way to manage your source water using natural forests, and it's much healthier for us, and it's great for the environment, and it's aesthetically pleasing as well. So that's a really great program that we've got started up, and that's through USDA and US Forest Service is who MDNR has been partnering with. And here's some other examples of some public participation and outreach. The city of Grand Rapids has some really fun artwork next to the storm sewers that impress upon people and give them, that visual that it's important that the water that we are going to end up drinking comes from there. It's part of the cycle. So that's one way to engage the community, to send that message to them. Like I said, there's festivals, water festivals, and we also pay for handing out educational material along with those. One of our grant recipients is the city of Kalamazoo, and they have quite a robust social media outreach. And they also have developed some competitions for students. And those competitions for students are to have the students develop some videos, some public information type videos about protecting source water and making sure wellheads are protected. And those are really fun when you go onto their website. They also do outreach in the movie theaters with ads and videos, and also they have some radio clips. So that's some good content to use, as well as even, like I said, social media. So the Great Lakes Water Authority, which supplies a significant amount of the water to the Southeast Michigan area, and they have the grants annually and use that funding for their social media campaigns and their outreach, as well as ensuring that their surface water intake protection plan is up to speed and is kept current. And then finally, the science. And this is my favorite part. And the geology and the hydrogeology, it varies across the state dramatically. Up in the UP, we have a lot more bedrock, a whole lot less source water. You have to rely upon the lakes more so because there's limited groundwater. And then you come down to the lower peninsula and there's a lot more unconsolidated material, sands, gravels, and clays. And the location of the aquifers is very important and critical to be able to identify those. We do have studies that are being conducted to identify where the aquifers are and what the source water is and is available. And whenever somebody submits a permit, that's part of the review is the water available where they want to put their permit in, and they oftentimes will put in a test well to determine if there's enough water, and that's part of a hydrogeological study. So they will put in a test well and they will pump it to determine if there's adequate water supply to provide for the need for the community. And there's such variability across the state in the geology and where the aquifers are. It's quite complex. So oftentimes we review this on a area by area, sometimes regional basis, to sometimes, very specific geographic locations. And the water budget is very important in determining how much water is available and is it sustainable to maintain the supply for the community, as well as determining those areas that need to be protected at the surface and ensuring that there aren't sources of contamination or other potential problems that could impact the source water. And next week is Source Water Protection Week. So this is quite timely. And there are plenty of resources out there if you want to share with your students. I provided some in a document that I believe that Eileen will be sharing with you, some links. There's some great YouTube videos on source water protection that I encourage you to share with students. And next week, let's protect the source. And I'll turn it back over to Eileen.
Thanks so much, Sarah. That was great. So that was the source water part of our presentation here. And as Sarah said, I have an anchor document that's got all the links and resources that the presenters are talking about that I'll send out to you afterwards. So don't worry if you feel like there's too much information coming at you too quickly. You'll get a copy of it after the fact. So I am going to introduce our next portion of the urban water cycle here with Chris Dorsey. And if you join, just you can go ahead and get your screen shared, Chris, but if you joined in the process of that last presentation, hello, welcome. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. If you would just keep your cameras off and your line muted during the presentation portion, you'll have a chance to come off mute, put your cameras on. We'll get to see each other after the presentations are complete. So go ahead, Chris, take it away. He's going to talk about how we sample and how we know if the water that we're drinking is clean.
Yeah, thanks, Eileen. Chris Dorsey, and I work with what's called the Community Water Supply Program. And I have been with the EGLE, and it was DEQ when I started, for 10 years working in well construction or in the public water supply program in one fashion or another. But I really love what Eileen has put together here. One of the things we've always talked about in our team with our partners is that we see ourselves as regulators. It's just kind of part of the territory, but we really do see ourselves as educators as well. And so it's great to be able to work with you as educators and help kind of spread our message along. So pretty awesome. The first thing I'm going to do, though, real quick, is explain what a community water supply system is. And so Sarah did a great job talking about our source water and how we protect it. And you heard her talk about groundwater wells or surface water, lakes, rivers, and streams. And so if you take that water and you're able to serve 25 residents on a year-round basis, or have at least 15 service connections, so maybe like, we'll just 15 homes. That's kind of the minimum criteria for being what we call a community water supply system. And in Michigan, we have just under 1,400 community water supplies throughout the state in the UP. And we serve about 74% of the population are served by a community water supply. And they really do vary. We have very small systems that are maybe privately owned, nursing home, or maybe a small apartment complex, all the way up through villages or townships to most cities that we live in. And so a big variety of systems throughout the state. So, all right, so with that, we'll talk about the toolbox, right? So I love this kind of analogy of a toolbox because it really does fit well with this, is that there are a lot of tools in place to help our community water supply system succeed. And we have, site visits, we have sanitary surveys that we work with our supply system, to look at everything from A to Z, and make sure that, everything is working as it should, and they understand the rules and the requirements. We have a requirement for every community water supply system to have a certified operator. And I think Corin will talk a little bit about the workforce when she comes on. And they're really the boots on the ground, right? They're doing the day-to-day work, so very important. We also have plenty of regulations and policy and standards and rules that really do lay the framework for what is expected of our community water supply systems. And it really helps them ensure that the water they're providing is of highest quality and most protective of public health. But really it comes down to is the sampling, right? This is where the proof is in the pudding. And so we require approximately 90, we really have our water supply systems for testing for about 90 different substances or contaminants in their drinking water. And so I'm going to go through some of that in my presentation and give you a breakdown of what each of those kind of looks like. So, all right. When I talk about contaminants, though, the first thing I like to do is talk about the risk. And we break it down into two categories. The first category, I always kind of put it is my hair's on fire, and we call it acute. We know that there's an immediate threat to public health, and we need to take action to minimize or eliminate that threat. Now, there's only a few contaminants that are acute, for example, like E. coli. Most of the contaminants that we monitor for are non-acute. So these I consider more my hair is smoldering. We need to be moving on it. We need to take action. Because over a long period of time, they really can have health impacts for our residents. And, when we talk about rules, they really do lay out the process for each of these. So when a water supply system does identify an acute or a chronic contaminant, what we'll call the Safe Drinking Water Act provides the structures, how they would notify their consumers and what to provide them in what kind of schedule it needs to be done in. And so there's that. All right. And so you heard Sarah mention briefly the Safe Drinking Water Act. And when it comes to regulations, right, we focus in on what's called Michigan Safe Drinking Water Act. It outlines the requirements for sampling of all of our public water supply systems, including what to test for, where to test it, how often, and then what is the allowable limit before we need to take action and reduce it or notify the public, right? And so I kind of broke it down into two categories. One is entry point and the other is distribution. And I have another slide following it to help also kind of reiterate it. The entry point, it really is where the source comes in. In this picture I have on there is pretty generic, but it really does represent it. You have one or two wells coming in, they feed into maybe a storage tank, and before it goes out to the distribution system, that way we refer to as our entry point. So we're really testing the water closest as to what it will look like from the source as possible. The distribution system sampling is really that. It's looking at the water quality within the distribution system. And so we think of our cities where you have miles and miles of pipe in the ground and going to homes. There's a lot that goes on. And so we have monitoring very specific to looking at what's going on in the distribution system. So this is just another example. Again, the sources that are in this picture really, we could just say reflect maybe groundwater wells. So you have two and they go into a common header. You may have treatment in place, you may not. We have a lot of systems that utilize treatment. And so you can see here before it goes out into that distribution system that we would do our entry point monitoring there. And then once we get into the distribution system with all that piping in the ground, that's where we'll focus in on particulars for distribution system. So, okay, so I'm going to talk about entry point sampling first. And there are a variety of different categories that I've broken this down into. The first is inorganics, and inorganics are mostly naturally occurring contaminants. And so that rock picture I have there is really reflective of arsenic. Every community water supply has to test for arsenic. And there are spots in Michigan where we can be found in your glacial till or in the bedrock. And as a result, that water supply system may have treatment to remove it or reduce it down to acceptable levels. Barium is another one. I don't see really much of that, but it's included. We still test for it. And then nitrate is one, again, where we do have spots in Michigan where we can find nitrate. And it can be man-made. Again, I started this by saying these are naturally occurring, which you can get nitrate from natural decomposition of organic matter. But we can also influence nitrate from overusing of fertilizers, or maybe in bad practices of spreading, manure. And so, and nitrate itself, again, is one of those acute contaminants that we watch really closely. And when we find it, again, we want to take immediate actions to eliminate the risk. The next is what we call VOCs, or volatile organic compounds. And I really just look at these as items related to fuel, like gasoline, diesel, kerosene, but it also, we can have VOCs as part of industrial practices, maybe where they're doing plating, or just part of their process, they have solvents. And so again, we're looking for those certain particular compounds. The next is what's called synthetic organic compounds. And I can best describe these as contaminants that might be related to pesticides or herbicides that we might use in our homes or in agricultural practices. And so we'll start with that. And then the next set, we have what's called radionuclides, which includes radium. There's 226 and 228. And radium is found in small amounts in almost all rock and soil. And so it can slowly dissolve in water. And so it's, again, some of those things that we want to sample for and make sure we're keeping an eye on. Again, Michigan's been pretty fortunate that we really don't have issues with radionuclides throughout the state. Per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, or what is also known as PFAS, is one of our newest set of drinking water standards. It's a large group of man-made chemicals that have been used really globally during the past century in many industrial applications and consumer products. It's carpeting, waterproofing material, upholstery, food packaging, personal care products, metal plating, and firefighting foam, and the list really does go on. So it's out there. The picture I included on the bottom is actually part of our sample video we put together when the PFAS rules came out. We provided some instructions to our partners at the community water supply systems on how best to collect a water sample. And that is a kind of snapshot of what that would look like. All right, so now we are on to distribution system sampling. So here, there really are three categories. The first is what we call bacteriological, and in a sense, really it's specific to total coliform monitoring. Every community water supply tests for it, but it's based on population. So the bigger the population you have, the more that you are checking for bacteria in that system. I think we did a quick check here. Last year, I think we collected over 104,000 total coliform samples, or we processed. And so we break that down, it's like 8,700 a month. So that's a lot. That's definitely a lot of samples. Lead and copper is another one. So here we're looking at potential impacts of lead corrosion from our lead service lines, or we could have smaller systems where we could see lead and copper may be impacted through fixtures. And then the last is what we call our disinfection byproducts. And so systems that use a disinfectant like chlorine. So if you're ever at home and you turn on your faucet and you can smell the chlorine, that system's also going to have a requirement to collect or monitor disinfection byproducts. And what it is you can have a reaction between that disinfectant and organics in the water. And so we want to make sure we're watching that and evaluating it. And if it's elevated, again, take actions to address it. So. All right, so we know all the sampling now, right? And so now it comes down to, we're going to talk about what's called the Consumer Confidence Report. So our water supply systems, they want to be transparent. They want their consumers to know what's going on. And the rules that we talked about, Michigan's Safe Drinking Water Act, provides the structure in the requirements of what is needed in this, what we call Consumer Confidence Report. And so the goal of it really is several fold. It's provide awareness of the water quality testing results to consumers. So the testing that is done where there are detections. We want our consumers to know about it. It gives us a chance to provide a better understanding of the processes specific to that system, maybe like the treatment or the source water protection that they have. And then to give them a chance is a system to provide a little bit more information as to what that water quality is and what it means to their consumers. And then ultimately, the goal of it is just to provide or increase public awareness of things that we can do to protect our drinking water sources, right? So it goes back to Sarah's original PowerPoint of we need to protect it because that's where it all starts. All right, so this is some general information of what is required, right? So we say it's required, but we provide the framework in which it needs to be in. So you need to have contact information. We need to provide information on the source water. Again, if it's groundwater wells or surface water, we need to provide some information on that. Part of our industry is we use a lot of acronyms and various terms. So we got to make sure that we define those, right? So that people who are reading this can easily understand what the numbers mean or what we're talking about. If you have detection of contaminants, you need to put them in a table format and provide them in the consumer confidence report. We also required that every supply put in their sodium information. So regardless detection or not, they'll always have to put in sodium information. And then again, this is a chance to notify consumers of maybe any violation, anything that might have happened in what you did to correct it. So if you had a violation issued, maybe you forgot to collect a sample, this gives you a chance to provide awareness as to missing that sample and coming back into compliance. And then along with this is some required educational information. So there's some content that's required in there. For example, if you have an arsenic detect over half of the allowable limit, you got to have a statement in there. There's certain particular statements regarding lead and copper and a few other contaminants. And so I love this analogy, and I stole it, but it really is true. You know, the more and more I go to the grocery store, I find myself and others looking at the nutrition labels, and I want to make sure that the food I'm buying is right for me and for my family. And this is one of the best ways we can do that. The consumer confidence report really it fulfills that same role, right? It gives you a chance to better understand what's in your drinking water and then help you make decisions on how you want to use it, or if you want to add any treatment to help, you know, focus in on some of the detections that were found. And then last, I just wanted to give some really great examples. We have, and these are just a few. Every water supply system does this on an annual basis, so I could have picked about any of them and give you a great example. But here are a few where they really do take ownership of this report. They really make it their own because they see value in it and they know that their residents will as well. And so they take the time to make a good report, provide good, clear information. And that's, I find awesome because again, it's just kind of the movement of education onto our consumers. So.
That was super helpful. Thank you, Chris. And
You're
just
welcome.
as an FYI, we'll have all the presenters' contact info in the Anchor document that you'll receive later if you want to follow up with questions. So thanks so much, Chris. We're going to pass it along to Holly Gokey, who is going to talk a little bit more in depth about lead and copper. So while Holly gets her slides up, I do want to point out, you feel free again to put questions in the chat if you have them. If any presenters want to answer questions in the chat during other presentations, you're welcome to do that. I know the question that's in there right now, we have some folks who work directly in water resource or water drinking water systems in some of our municipalities, and they might want to chime in. So we'll have a chance to talk about those in more detail, but I am going to pass it along to Holly now, let her introduce herself and talk a little bit more in depth about lead and copper. And just FYI to all our presenters, we're running a couple minutes behind, so if we can try to keep them closer to our 8-minute side of the 8 to 10 minute, that'll give us a little bit more time to talk to each other at the end. So go ahead, Holly, take it away.
Eileen, are you seeing my presentation?
I am seeing your presentation, but it's not in presentation mode. There you go. Click the slide.
All right, awesome.
And then you're going to want to hit that swap display settings, swap view like we did before. Perfect. Looks great.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Glad that you could join us today. My name is Holly Gokey. I am the school and childcare drinking water specialist for EGLE, and I work mostly with schools and childcares that are on a community water supply. So we'll get started here. I'm going to talk about lead and copper in drinking water because Chris mentioned it's part of the sampling requirements from the Michigan Safe Drinking Water Act, and because basically it is a pretty hot topic here in Michigan, as it is throughout the United States. So just a little bit of basic information about lead and copper. They're both soft metals that can be found in the environment, and because they're soft metals, they're malleable and easily shaped into pipes and plumbing fixtures, and that's why they're used frequently in plumbing. Small amounts of copper are essential in the daily human diet to maintain good health, but lead is a neurotoxin that can cause long-term health effects, even at very low exposure levels. There is no safe level of lead exposure, especially in infants, young children, and pregnant women. Children under the age of 6 are at the greatest risk to lead exposure because of their developing bodies and their small size. Increased lead levels in children have been shown to cause neurological damage, learning disabilities, shorter stature, impaired hearing, impaired formation and function of blood cells, short attention span, and behavioral problems, just to name a few. Lead in drinking water rarely comes from the ground or the source water that is received to the distribution system. Lead typically gets into the drinking water through the corrosion of leaded material in the distribution system or from leaded material found in the building plumbing. Corrosion is a reaction between the water and pipes, solder, or fixtures that contain lead or copper. Basically, corrosion is an eating away of the plumbing material and the release of lead or copper into the water. Lead in drinking water may be soluble or dissolved in the water, or it may be found as small pieces of lead from lead-containing material that broke loose. Lead can also be variable within a system or within a building from fixture to fixture. What I mean by variable is that a fixture sampled once may not detect lead at that time of sampling. However, the same fixture may have an elevated result of lead when collecting a sample on a different day. It all depends on various factors. The amount of lead or copper that gets into drinking water depends on these major factors. Water's corrosive. It is the universal solvent, which means it will dissolve anything it's in contact with if given enough time. The corrosivity of water depends on acidity, alkalinity, conductivity, and some other water quality factors. A lead or copper problem will not exist if there is no lead or copper in the plumbing system. And obviously, the more there is, the more that can leach into the water. Another factor is water temperature. Hot water increases chemical reactions and leaching of lead and copper into water. That is why it's important to never use water from the hot water side of the fixture for drinking, cooking, or baby formula. Stagnant water greatly increases lead and copper release, and flushing or running the water systematically can prevent contamination of not only lead and copper, but also bacteria and other water quality problems. Schools and childcare facilities are particularly vulnerable to lead or copper contamination due to the intermittent water use and long periods of no water use in the building or at individual fixtures. Because both lead and copper at certain amounts can be harmful to human health, Chris mentioned that there are regulations to suppliers of water that give or supply water to the public. And they must be followed when they deliver that water to their customers. And those requirements are set in the Michigan Safe Drinking Water Act. So per the regulations, the water supplier must collect a representative set of samples from homes in the community and take action to reduce the corrosivity of the water that's delivered to the customers when at least 10% of tested homes have results above 15 parts per billion for lead or 1,300 parts per billion for copper. However, EGLE recommends that actions are taken to reduce the risk of lead exposure at individual taps that test above 5 parts per billion, with a goal to reduce it as much as possible. We use 5 parts per billion as a health recommendation because federal law allows that much lead in bottled water. And bottled water may be approved as an alternate source of drinking water if the water system does not meet water quality standards. A water supplier will take action to lower the corrosivity of the water delivered to its customers with water treatment at the water plant. However, even if water meets the standards when it's delivered to a home or a school, and water not, the plumbing and the water non-use can change the water quality within the building. Listed here are some immediate, short, and long-term actions that can be taken to reduce the risk of lead exposure. An immediate response must be taken when a sample result shows elevated lead or copper. The fixture should not be used for consumption until corrective measures are taken and resampling shows a reduced risk. The fixture may be used for hand washing, bathing, cleaning, or other non-consumption purposes. An alternate approved source of water, such as bottled water, might be needed, or a certified lead reduction point of use device may be installed. Short-term actions may be taken until the permanent long-term fix can be done. Although it's important to try to remove the source of lead altogether, it may take time and resources to accomplish that goal, if it can be accomplished at all. And I'm talking about within a building or in a home. The easiest and most cost-effective action is to prevent water stagnation by flushing the building pipes routinely and running the water at a fixture for 30 seconds to 5 minutes before using the water for consumption. In homes, it could be running or turning on the faucet all the way, taking a shower, running a load of laundry, or running the dishwasher. In schools, the entire plumbing system should be flushed at least twice a year, and all occupants encouraged to make it a practice to run that water for at least 30 seconds to a minute at each fixture before drinking or using it for cooking. Signs should be posted at the fixtures as reminders in school buildings. The use of lead reduction filters may be a short or long-term option. When using a filter, it's important to make sure it meets the NSF ANSI standards 42 and 53 certification for lead reduction. Always use cold water for consumption and clean the aerators on a regular basis. And finally, although costly up front, a long-term action may be to replace older plumbing and faucets with certified lead-free fixtures. Finally, lead and copper cannot be seen, smelled, or tasted in water. Therefore, the only way to know if it's in the water is to test for it. All right.
Thank you so much, Holly. That was a lot of really good information. And I see some folks are using the chat, which is great. Ashley, if you want to go ahead and get your presentation queued up. Ashley is our DHHS friend who's joined into our EGLE webinar because clean water is something that, you know, is managed by not just one agency, as you've heard. So Ashley's going to talk a little bit about some of the community engagement when you get to those water users around helping people understand actions they can take and information they need to have clean, healthy water. And then after Ashley, we're going to wrap up the presentation with a little bit of information about water careers. So go ahead and take it away, Ashley, and you could introduce yourself. You're on mute, Ashley. There you go.
Okay, am I good now? I couldn't find my little button disappeared, so I was getting all confused. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for having me. My name's Ashley Mark. I'm a community engagement coordinator with the MDHHS Division of Environmental Health. And today I'll be talking a little bit about our division's statewide drinking water campaign, as we refer to it, and how you can access and utilize in your classroom some of the resources that we have developed related to drinking water and health. So first, a little bit about the Division of Environmental Health. We serve to promote and protect the health of the people of Michigan by using the best available methods to educate residents about potential hazards, as well as actions that can be taken to reduce potential risks to health. And by applying the best available science, the vision and the hope is that we can end or prevent injury from environmental, chemical, and physical hazards, all while also promoting equity for all Michiganders. So this program was developed kind of as a response to concerns in our state. It has the purpose of increasing Michiganders' knowledge and awareness about how drinking water can impact health. So by implementing the program, we hope it will encourage residents to take actions to reduce and prevent potential exposures. So there's three kind of primary goals within the campaign. The first goal is to educate all Michiganders about two things. The first being where their drinking water comes from. So you heard a little bit about like city water or public water supplies. And then also there's private water supplies or private residential wells. So we like people to know, where is their water coming from? Is it coming from city water? Is it coming from a well? Is it coming from surface water? Is it coming from groundwater? Just having a basic understanding of the source of their drinking water. And then the second piece of education we hope to put out there is some drinking water best practices. So things that everyone can do to improve the quality of their water. Things like keeping their water moving, cleaning the aerators, which you heard about a little bit ago, checking your home plumbing, testing your drinking water if necessary, and treating it if necessary. And then, of course, stepping up for the environment, protecting the environment to take care of our natural sources of drinking water. And these are things that youth can really get involved with as well. You can teach a child about how to clean an aerator, and they're likely to go home and teach their parents or guardians to do that as well. You can ask them about where their water comes from, and that might open up a conversation at home about sources of water, which also helps to increase awareness for the adults at home. So there really is an opportunity here to not only educate youth, but also use that as a way to get that information home to adults. So for goal one, we developed a drinking water website, the Care for My Drinking Water website. It has all different topics covered: testing, drinking water sources, how to understand test results. You can see them all up there. There's also a specific page for private well owners. And our Learn More page offers resources from other organizations as well as ours that include like K through 12 activities and educational opportunities around environmental health and drinking water in particular. So that would be a really good resource for you to check out if you're looking for things to incorporate into your curriculum. We've also developed a Gov Delivery newsletter to keep residents up to date on the progress of our program. And we will be sending out updates as new youth resources become available. So if you'd like to stay up to date with updates, feel free to subscribe to the newsletter. I think that link is included in that document that will get sent out at the end. We've also been really focusing in on our youth education lately. So we've developed an activity book, one for grades K through 2 and the other for grades 3 through 5, that kind of walk the child through how drinking water makes its way from our environment to our homes. We've also gotten several copies of this Why Water's Worth It children's book that we hope to distribute, as well as developing a video, the Follow Water from Start to Tap animated video with our friend Dewey, that again walks the child through how water makes its way from our environment to our home. We also have outreach opportunities. We attend water festivals and things like that. But we are working right now on putting together some like library resource bags that will have stickers and bookmarks, and we're just trying to expand our youth opportunities. We hope to do book readings, and we've already started collaborating with several organizations, some of which I see folks are here from. But if you have interest in learning more about these resources, don't hesitate to reach out. So stepping away from goal 1, goal 2 is focused in on private residential well owners. Private well owners are responsible for the quality of their own water, so it's particularly important that we provide educational resources on testing, treatment, inspecting your well, well maintenance, things like that. So as I mentioned before, we have developed our website that has a private well page. There, we also have linked our private well, or our Care for My Well promotion toolkit, which contains all of our resources related to private wells. So it has contaminant fact sheets, so you can learn more about contaminants like lead, copper, coliform bacteria, the ones you heard about earlier. We also have like private well postcards, social media content, and then this is also where we will have all of our youth resources. So we already have some activity sheets on there. Our activity books will get added, and there's an link at the bottom of the toolkit where you're able to order those materials and have them shipped directly to you. So if you have interest in having access to any of those materials, you can find them there. Our last goal, goal 3, is focused on public water supply customers and educating residents about how they can learn about the quality of their water. So you heard a minute ago about the consumer confidence reports. That is a big focus of this piece of education. It's educating about making sure people know that consumer confidence reports exist, improving knowledge about how they can get access to that information, and then information about how to understand and interpret that information. So we're still working on developing those resources. We also have a statewide media campaign. So we'll have billboards, radio reads, YouTube and TV ads that you'll start seeing across the state. We're working on developing the creatives for that right now. And lastly, I mentioned this kind of in brief earlier, but we do a lot of community engagement and outreach for this campaign. We attend health fairs, water festivals, farmers markets, wherever we can go, school events. So if you, your organization or your school has an event coming up, please let us know. We're always happy to attend. And we have regional staff across the state to go to different locations as well. That's it. Thank you so much.
Oh, that was so great, Ashley. I wish we could all be like clapping in person so you could hear it. Lots of really good information, and we'll make sure you get the links to the sites Ashley mentioned on how to request some of that information. And we're excited to partner with DHHS to promote clean water. So
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So we're going to wrap up our presentation portion with Corin Carpenter here, who's going to talk just quickly about some of the career opportunities in drinking water and environmental health. So we are going to, Corin, just for you, FYI, wrap up our presentation piece by about 5:45, so we have time to chat. So go ahead and do that. And we'll also put any links to videos and things that Corin's got in her presentation into the document that'll get sent out. So you can watch those at your leisure and share them with your students as well, so that they can hear from folks about careers in drinking water too. So take it away, Corin. You're on mute, Corin. You got to unmute yourself. There you go. There you go. Perfect. Hey, Corin, I'm going to pause you real quick. We're having trouble hearing you. You look like you're unmuted, but we still can't hear you. Oh, yeah. Yeah, why don't you pause your microphone is disabled when, oh, I heard that. Okay. It's sharing your computer audio and not you. That's the problem.
Can you hear me now?
Now I hear you. Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
I'm hoping my video works because I did click that one button that shares the video. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you now. Yep.
Okay.
But now we can't see your screen anymore.
Oh no.
You're okay. Here, if you want, Corin, I can run your slides and then it'll share my sound and then you can talk and it should be fine. Oh.
Hey,
All right,
Eileen.
I'm gonna share for you. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
That'll be easier, I think.
That's strange. Sorry.
It's okay. Zoom sometimes we don't know what's going on with Zoom.
So I stopped sharing.
Yep. All right, I will share. You can go ahead and start talking, Corin, and I'll get your slides up for you.
Okay. So
Actually,
you can go to the next one, Eileen.
Okay, hang on. I gotta pause it a second because I forgot to share the computer sound. Okay. There we go.
So you can go to the next slide. Chris Dorsey had talked about water supplies, community water supplies. And there's 1,400 in Michigan. They provide year-round service to not less than 25 residents or not less than 15 living units. That's like the Lansing Board of Water and Light. Great Lakes Water Authority, which I think Sarah mentioned, is one of our biggest water supplies in the state, like the city of Ionia. And if you work there, a lot of the water operators that work in that plant, you need to have like a high school diploma or GED or equivalent, or I'll talk about in a few minutes, have a degree from a water wastewater tech program. There's also non-community water supplies. There's about 9,500 in Michigan. The definitions there, but those are like restaurants, bars, churches, stuff like that. And you need a high school diploma again, or a GED or equivalent. There's no experience requirements in that area. So you can go to the next slide, Eileen. So a little bit about the program. We certify drinking water operators in the state of Michigan. And you can kind of click through those. The water supplies need to have an operator in charge, and water supplies have basically 3 categories. There's an F, D, and S, and I probably don't have time to run through everything, but there's 5 levels. 1 is the highest level, 5 is the lowest. And in the state of Michigan, we have roughly 4,500 operators that are certified. In our database for OpCert, we've got about 10,000 customers that we help. Some of them aren't certified, and obviously a lot of them are certified that are in the database. And EGLE also has done training for over 6,100 registrants this year so far in our drinking water training courses. So you should check those out. If you go to the website, you can look at training courses about water. Next slide. So what I really want to tell you today and why I really am excited is I want to do some statistics on the water workforce. In 2018, that was pre-pandemic, there was an EPA report that said the median age of water employees, it's about 48 years old. And there's roughly 30 to 50% of those workers that are eligible for retirement. So that was before the pandemic. I think the numbers, obviously a lot of people retired during the pandemic. So there's a big need here overall. There's a big need. There's 150,000 public drinking water and wastewater systems in the US. And water utilities, they're facing challenges to recruit, train, and retain all those employees. So these are essential workers and these are important jobs. And that's kind of what I want to get across with everybody today. So the problem is, I guess there's not enough awareness at the high school level, at the middle school level, even at the elementary school level of these great jobs. Next slide. So this gives some average wage statistics for a water treatment plant operator. You can see at the low end, the bottom 20%, it's like $18.06. At the higher end, it's $30.40. And those wages, they might have went up a little since COVID, since it seemed like all the wages kind of went up a little bit. Next slide. So some of the benefits to working in water, you get to stay and serve in your own communities, which I know a lot of people like to do that too. It's recession-proof jobs, so they're good jobs, they're hands-on jobs. Not everybody likes hands-on ones, but some people, really want to be out in the field doing the work. And you can get hired directly out of high school. It's good pay, and typically they have good pensions and multipliers. And you can qualify for student loan forgiveness. I don't know if people noticed the Biden forgiveness of student debt, and working in public community water supply systems. Next slide. So I've got a video to show you here. EGLE has a couple great water career videos, and I don't know, Eileen, are you able to play that?
I'm Zach Archibald. I'm a water distribution mechanic in the water department at Board Water and Light. I got out of high school, decided college wasn't for me, started out in trades. Kind of one thing led to another. I ended up in the water department. You got a set schedule, and so you get to be home a lot, be with your kids, be with your family, and that's what I was looking for. I'm a mechanic A. Basically, they fix the pipes, do the wrenching, shoveling, that kind of stuff for water work. Distribution, there's all sorts of positions. We got managers, directors, supervisors, foremen, guys that run equipment, operators, guys like myself who are in the hole, mechanics. Everything's been good with EGLE. We've had lots of training through them. They're always there to guide us through our way for new rules, new laws that pertain to what we do. My advice is, if you want to do this kind of work, get dirty, work with your hands. Sometimes it's hard work, but if you're willing to put in the time and do it, and college isn't your thing, school's not your thing, get in early, start early, do it. If I had to go back, yes, I would start earlier.
All right, super. So that is the distribution one. Those are the people that are working out outside in the field, excavating, doing water main breaks and stuff like that. So I want to talk a little bit about we have also water and wastewater tech programs that I'm going to talk about. And these are approved by the Advisory Board of Examiners in Michigan. They advise our unit on, how to basically approve programs in the water field. And you're immediately eligible to take these entry-level exams for water and wastewater if you take these water and wastewater tech programs that I'm going to talk about. You cannot keep students long enough to finish the program right now. They're getting job offers before they even finish. So this kind of shows you the demand in these jobs right now. And it's a 2-year program. There's an internship requirement. It's like a direct pipeline into the water and wastewater career. And like I said, they're eligible to take the F4, D4, S4. So these are the 2 approved programs in the state. Bay College, which is located up in Escanaba, they do have an online option. So, and a lot of times they will do the internship locally to where that person lives. But it's a direct pipeline. There's a link there that you can see for Bay College. And I think I've got some handouts or 1-page flyers. We also have Delta College that is located in Saginaw area. It's a 2-year program, again, a direct pipeline into the water and wastewater career, and then they're eligible. And exciting stuff is going on in Grand Rapids. I think Hillary is on, so hopefully she'll get to talk about it in a little bit here. But EPA got a grant for water infrastructure workforce development, and they did a great thing this summer. They did a middle school camp summer boot camp with that money. It was sold out. They've had high school career fairs, and they're hopefully going to get an approved program also through the advisory board like Bay and Delta. So I don't know if we want to take time for this, Eileen. This is the EnviroScape model that shows like a water plant, a water treatment system. And it was done by the Lansing Board of Water and Light. It's pretty excellent, but it's another resource.
Hello, my name is Angie Goodman, and I work for the Lansing Board of Water and Light. Think about your morning routine. You probably showered, washed your hands, or brushed your teeth, right? Have you ever thought about where that water comes from? Well, you're in luck. Using this EnviroScape, which is available through EGLE's lending station, we're going to learn about where drinking water comes from, how it's treated, and how it gets to your home. Let's get started.
I paused it for you so that we didn't watch the whole thing, but I'll send the link to that. That's really great.
That's all I've got. So thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Corin. Okay, I'm gonna switch you over. Let's see. You can still see. All right, is my other screen back up for you all? I lost your pictures.
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you so much. So I want to just quickly wrap up this presentation portion with sharing some of the curricular connections. So I have linked on here that EGLE Classroom video, and Corin mentioned, thank you, our lending station. So we have a bunch of materials through our lending station that you can borrow, a number of different EnviroScape models, a groundwater flow model. We have a new kit that's just added to the library called the Awesome Aquifer Kit, which is a little bit better for younger students, a little bit less complicated than the groundwater flow model. So all that's available to check out. They're free. I'll put the link in the chat for how to borrow those things. And the further out you can request them, the better. We can generally make shorter term requests work, but especially as the lending station grows in popularity, the earlier you request it, the more likely you're going to get your time that you want. We've got the MEECS units, which many of you are aware of. The MEECS, Michigan Environmental Education Curriculum Support, has a water quality unit that has been overhauled and is going to be redeployed, a whole brand new version of that unit in 2023. So keep your eyes peeled for that. We're also working on a career series. So to supplement those videos that Corin showed, showing more people who are working in this field, showcasing what their lives look like, hearing their advice for how to get into those careers. And then a number of other resources linked on the slide here that we'll share resources with you later, including Project WET, which is Water Education Today. And if you're interested in that curricular resource, Hillary, Karen, and I, who are on the call, are leading a workshop on that later towards the end of October, I think on October 21st, a month from today. And Hillary, if you want to drop the link for the registration in the chat, you can do that and people could register for that. So with that, Jim, you can go ahead and pause our recording now, and I'm going to stop sharing and we can move into our